Hello and welcome to another episode of Run Till You're Done. This week we are joined by someone who has an amazing list of running events under her belt, but most recently has came to our attention by just podiuming in the UK's toughest race, the Spine. Thank you for joining us, Nikki Arthur.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's good to be here.
It's great for you to join us. We'll start by asking the question that we ask everybody. How did you get into running?
So I initially was a boxer by trade, really. So when I moved up to the Isle of Lewis for a teacher job, I joined like a local Muay Thai gym. And when I moved over to the Isle of Man, I continued with that sort of martial art combat sport for quite a long time. And, you know, a really big part of martial arts and combat sport is sort of running, just to keep, you know, your stamina high and your, you know, your weight down basically as well. And yeah, when all the gyms shut in COVID and lockdown and things like that, and around sort of 2020, I decided that I needed sort of something else. And I was living on the Isle of Man at the time, and myself and a couple of friends decided that we're going to task ourselves with running around the coastal footpath of the Isle of Man, which was 100 miles. So yeah, back in 2020 was the sort of like, I guess, when I got the ultra bug, and I managed to achieve that sort of goal of running around the Isle of Man with my friend Kevin. And then yeah, ever since then I've just been enjoying ticking off big miles, really. So yeah, I guess it was sort of a needs must when I was boxing, running, and now it's like, yeah, just my sort of soul sport now. I just love it.
So you got into the running during COVID, as you're saying, with the lockdowns and everything. When things, I would imagine, starting to open back up, did you have your first race at that point, or did you have a race even before the running took a hold while you were doing the boxing?
I didn't ever do an ultra race. I'd done an Ironman, which I guess is like obviously sort of ultra. I did that in 2016 for my 30th birthday, but I hadn't ever done like an ultra race. So my first one was the Scotland 100 miler that GB Ultras run. It was one of their first times doing it, and it got cancelled sort of mid-race due to weather. So I only managed to get in 75 miles. But I was winning that race and I was coming fourth overall. So I was doing well. I was absolutely devastated for the race to get to get canned at the time, but it was really, really bad wind, and it was definitely the right decision for GB Ultras to make. So yeah, that was like my sort of first experience of ultra racing, and yeah, again, like really enjoyed it. I felt like I had unfinished business as well because the race had got cut short, and you know, I'd really hoped to sort of improve on my time from like my Isle of Man challenge, so I didn't have that. And yeah, so that was the sort of first sort of dabbling in UK events, I guess.
Your Isle of Man challenge, you tempted to put that on as a race?
Do you know, I've talked about it. It's definitely something that we have thought about. It's just I'm not too sure the trails would take, you know, high numbers, which is a shame. It's just it is a lot of it is sort of coastal eroded and things like that now. But there's definitely scope for a really good ultra race on the Isle of Man. So please watch this space.
The Isle of Man hilly.
Yeah, it's quite undulating. It doesn't have anything really high, like the highest point's like just over 600 meters. But we've got a ultra, like an ultra. It's called the Mountain Marathon. It's not like a typical mountain marathon. It's not like a nav one. But yeah, it goes from north to south, like across the sort of tops of all the mountains. So that's normally in Easter time. So we have that, which is a great race. But yeah, it's really traily and felly, if you know what I mean. It's not very mountainous, not like Wales or the lakes or anything like that, but loads of good ways to train over here for sure.
Yeah, well, you've been training over the tops of mountains on trails for your sky running, which is something that you came high up in, was it last year or the year before? And that got you nominated for Scottish Sportswoman of the Year. So
Yeah.
you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I like the sky running had put out, apply to go to the World Championships, and myself, my partner, and one of the boys from the training group thought we'll kind of put our name in the hat. That'd be ace to be selected for the team to go to that. I really wasn't expecting sort of to get selected at all. And then so it came back that I was getting to go. So the World Championships were in Spain in September, just gone. I had a great experience, like really good team to go away with. I was really, really nervous about going to that because I'd had quite a few wobbles on, like Grib Goch and, like a little wobble on Helvellyn and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God, what if I get to Spain and I just freeze in the middle of this big massive mountain? But it didn't ever sort of come to that. It was a really great route, and it led to a nomination for the Scottish Women in Sports Sportswoman of the Year, which I don't have really any ties to anything with Scottish athletics or anything like that, because obviously I'm here in the Isle of Man. It's through Manx Fell Runners, which is England athletics. So to get recognition from something in Scotland really meant like so much. And then when I went to the awards ceremony, like there's just like people talking about LA 2028 and all like set up like whole national charities, and it was just brilliant. And like the guest speaker was Sammy, the para athlete, talking about Tokyo 2020 in Paris, and I just come out of the hall like proper shell shock, just like so amazing. Like, and the two girls that I was in the category with, the two cyclists as well, like when I was looking at, I'd heard of Nia, but I hadn't heard of the other girl. And when I was looking at their accolades, I was like, have they got the right Nikki here? Like, oh my gosh, like I couldn't believe it. And so I was that was just really, like, I was really delighted at that, and it's just nice to be sort of known that I've been like mentioned in that sort of area in Scotland. It's really nice to be recognised in that way.
So
and for ultra running as well, like for ultra running, like it's not always up there, is it, as well? And when they were showing the video of me like sort of skipping across one of the tops in one of the sky races, everybody's like, oh. I was like, looks worse than it is, I promise.
So podcast, Nikki, when's your nomination?
With
Sorry?
my nomination.
yeah, you're next.
Yeah, come on, Nikki, let's get you're the second best Nikki on the podcast tonight.
Well, this is true. I'm trying. I'm very inspired by all the female ultra runners. It absolutely blows my mind. But as Mike's saying, just for you to be even nominated for Scottish Women
in Sport,
Personality of the Year, that must have been something else when you got told that you were nominated.
I was so shocked, like honestly so shocked, and I was like, are you sure? Like, I was like reading the email, like this has got to be wrong. Like, how did they even get nominated? Just those sorts of things go through your head a little bit, like of imposter syndrome, I guess. But when you put it down on paper, like I worked really hard last year, so it's lucky to get recognised and nominated, and have it pay off in that way. So that was really special.
So in that, you mentioned Manx Fell Runners. Is that the club that you're with?
Yes, that is my local fell running club, the Manx Fell Runners. Yeah, they put up with me, or have put up with me for the last sort of 4 or 5 years. So, they're an ace, really, really great community, and I sit on the committee and sort of like help sort of drive the junior section of the fell running club as well, just to it's such an amazing way to be outdoors, I think, fell running and trail running, and it's great to have sort of the juniors on board and sort of driving that sort of side of the club now. So that's been ace.
Yeah, you say put up with, but I think with your awards and your wins, I think they'll be happy to have you.
I hope so.
And speaking of wins and your achievements, where leads us on to the next question, which you've just done in Spain, but that wasn't your first Spain event, was it, that you entered? What other Spain events have you done, and can you talk about those?
Sure. So I back in I guess it would be 2023, my partner did the Spine for the first time, and I got hooked, I got inspired, I got the dot watching bug, and watching sort of the all the females out on the route like inspired me to apply for the full spine for 2024. However, I didn't get through the lottery. I was on the waiting list. But then sort of 9 weeks before the full spine sort of came about, I got an email saying, "Oh, would you like to enter the Challanger North?" which is starts in Hawes, and then is 160 miles up to Kirkyet home in Scotland. And I decided, even though I didn't have that much training time, I had like a lot of, you know, stuff behind me from that year. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go for it. And into the Challanger North. So that was the longest that I'd done. I'd done 120 in the Kerry Way in the September. So it was another like good 40 miles on top of what I'd achieved before. So, and I knew it was going to be my first sort of dabbling into going into the second night and sort of experiencing a bit of sleep deprivation and stuff like that. And I figured that'd be a really good sort of stepping stone to hopefully getting into the full spine when I did. So yeah, I sort of surprised myself on the Challanger North as well. You know, I ended up finishing first female, but I finished third overall in the race behind Joe Leary and Tom Hollins. I hooked up with a bunch of great Irish athletes, so two lads and then Laura O'Driscoll, a really established Irish ultra runner. Unfortunately, Laura had to DNF with a hip injury towards the end of the race, but I sort of pulled away from them because I just, you know, I tend to have a stronger second half of the race. If you know me, I'm a negative split gal. I'm pretty conservative in the first half and feel stronger in the second, and I always sort of use that energy to get to the finish line. So pulled away from them, and like it was a great race. I learned a lot, and like I say, you know, it was the biggest distance I'd ever gone, and and my actual partner, Oren, was out on the full spine at the time. So kept on thinking he was going to get me. I didn't want that. So really special when he came into the finish last year at Kirkyet home. He proposed on the finish line. So that was super sweet. So the spine has got so much emotional and physical memories for us both.
Did I ask what you said?
I said no, I'm kidding. I actually didn't know what he's doing. I thought he was a little bit delirious, and I was like, oh my God, like, come on, get into the hotel, it's freezing. And then he was just like, just wait, I've got something in my bag. And I was like, what is he doing? Like, I was proper confused.
More confused than him.
Yeah, he did. He carried it the whole way because he thought he might meet me out on the trail. So he wanted to do it if he met me. But I obviously like sort of exceeded my expectations as to how I was going to run that race, and finished quite a bit before him. So he never met me. But it was in the little bit at the back of his bag the whole way.
Well, leading on from that, this year you ended up doing the full spine yourself, and just to go one up on him, you beat his time, finishing in 103 hours, 36 minutes and 59 seconds.
That's right, yeah. You'd be fuming.
So, story starts mile 1. How did it progress?
It was very much a roller coaster. So hadn't recce'd very much of the south part of the spine. I'd only done maybe about 50 miles of it. So I knew I was kind of going into the unknown, but I had recce'd from out of Edale, and like I knew I would feel all of a bit of a fluster because of the sort of level of the females that were in the race. I knew it was going to go off like quite fast, and I just can't get involved in stuff like that because it's just not how I run my races. Like I have to be more chill in the first half, or I get all panicked and flustered. And we climbed all the way out. Once we got up to Bladder, it was like the most beautiful inversion like I've ever seen. It was absolutely unbelievable. It was so gorgeous. But it was pretty short-lived, to be fair. Like the fog came in pretty soon after that, and it was just quite a lot of damp, dreary, like trudging through snow and slop, and you know, just hard. It was just hard work that first day. I remember sort of thinking to myself, like sort of at about 4 or 5 o'clock, like my legs are hurting like I would expect them to hurt on day 3. Never mind 7 hours or 8 hours into it. Yeah, and then once I got to Hebden, I definitely didn't spend enough time there, like based on how tired I was. I was all a bit of a like, oh, I need to get in and get out, get in and get out. And it's like a big slog to checkpoint 2. It's like 60, 70, nearly 70 miles really. So like in hindsight, didn't spend enough time there. I left with Lucy and had a good chat with her. She was quite funny, like coming out of the checkpoint. She left and come raging back in, like, I've only got one pole. Like, I've only got one pole. Did you just give me one pole? And they were all in a fluster. She was like, "Oh, just need to get my spares out the drop bag." So I'd like left by this point, and her pole's just sat at the end of the stairs at the checkpoint because like I don't. The checkpoints are the most stressful thing in the whole spine, I swear. Like they're just a bit manic. Everybody's a bit like getting sleep deprived, and then you're all ready to go, and then you've got to kit check, and they give you like they ask for 5 random items, so you've got to undo all your kit bag again. But you're all dressed to go out in the -2 temperatures, and it's boiling hot, and it's just such a stressful environment. So I was just laughing with her about how stressed she was. She was like, "I'm such a disaster in the checkpoints." I'm like, I think everyone is really. Like I know some of the top guys are going in and out, but they're really hard work. So yeah, I definitely should have sat down a little bit longer, had a bit more food in checkpoint 1.
Do you think as the race goes on, do the checkpoints, I guess they get not so busy, but you're getting more tired? How?
Yeah, there's like, so when I was in Langdon Beck, it was nice and quiet because I hadn't caught up to the Challanger North guys yet, and then I was relatively sort of like high up in the pack of the full spine. But then after sort of Langdon Beck, like Alston and Bellingham and all the sort of intermediate and smaller transitionary tech points were all really busy with full spiners and Challenger Norths. So it makes it really hard to navigate. Like Bellingham was manic when I was in there, with like didn't you drop bags are massive, like 20-kilo bags, but you got one little like tiny chair and you're trying to like manage all your stuff in there. And yeah, and like you say, everybody is like sleep deprived by then, so it makes it even harder to sort of navigate. um but yeah, that Langdonbeck was probably the only sort of quiet checkpoint that I was in. I tried to sleep there, but it was during the day, and it was a bit noisy and just really light, and I just didn't manage to sleep there. I slept well at Hawes. I was really tired by the time I got to Hawes. I'd had a rough day on the Monday and really dizzy and lightheaded and things like that. And when I started to eat in Hawes, I was like, this isn't going well for me right now. So I'm gonna have to go up and go to the toilet. But I didn't make it to the toilet. I fainted in front of everybody, which was great. All I just woke up with just like the people like shouting, "Medic!" Like sounds like something like out of the bloody something out of the war. Like, and then but it's happened to me before. So like it happened to me in Greg's hut in the Challanger North. Like I felt really woozy and I was already sat down, but I got kept in Greg's hut during the Challanger North for a little bit longer than normal, just to sort of sort myself out. So once I'd had sleep in Hawes, I got up and my body felt like a lot better, but I was still not feeling like right, and I was just constantly vomiting in the toilet, phoning my partner on, and like I can't stop being sick, like I don't know what to do. And he was like, "Just get out the checkpoint," and I was like, "Right, okay." And that's what I did. So, like I got out the checkpoint and I just sort of bimbled along for a while, like sipping on high carb gels and, trying to eat little and often. And I knew I'd moved into sort of like sort of like a lower position, but I caught up with Sarah quite quickly, and then ran with her for a little bit. She was struggling with sleep debt, and we had a wee chat and stuff like that. But it's just amazing how you can rally. Like it's like just crazy. Like, I really, really thought when I was hugging that toilet, like this is it. Like I really thought that this was the end of my race. Like, and after all that, I was just like, oh, I can. And Nora was like, feel better when you get in fresh air. And I was like, and I did. And like I say, I've been there before, and it happened to me in the West Highland Way. Like I just couldn't stop being sick, and you know, the good thing about the West Highland Way is you've got a support car nearby, haven't you? So, like, you know, I pushed myself on the West Highland Way trying different things because I knew, like, if anything happened, my support car's like, a couple of miles away, so it's no big issue. But because I'd had that experience, I knew exactly what I needed to do, really, and like I knew that if I sipped on gels, that eventually I'd start to be able to eat again. And then by the time I got up to Tan Hill, even though the weather was wild and it was bog and rivers, slushies everywhere. It was really, really hard going. And there's a picture of me in Tan Hill and I just look like, I don't know, being beat up by something like, but I managed to eat like loads of soup and bread and have a coffee and then like, again sort of rallied and I left with a couple of guys this time and that's just nice being able to chat to people and get the time just passes quite quickly. And that sort of went into the next day and then I got a big massive like wind the next day. It was like great. I pushed heading towards sort of like Hadrian's Wall and caught up with loads of people and chatted with loads of people and just was moving really well. So that was good. And then that night it's just the nights were really hard. Like the sleep deprivation, like loads of people talk about like mad hallucinations, and I really did have like crazy hallucinations when I was on Crossfell, but the majority of the sleep debt for me was just the turmoil of trying to stay awake. Like it
Right,
just
I just need
is.
to ask your hallucinations. Let's talk about that. What were you hallucinating?
So climbing up to Crossfell, because it's one of the sort of highest points, isn't it? So I was climbing up, I was on my own, and the wind was picking up and the rain was coming down, starting to get foggy, but like I really, really couldn't keep my eyes open. Like so I sat down, like I literally just sat down exactly where I was and like just put my alarm on for 5 minutes just to give my head a bit of a break. Because I knew like I was going to be climbing and climbing and climbing for a while. So I sat down and I was like, right, okay, you don't feel refreshed, but your brain just feels like it can go again. So I'm climbing, and as I'm getting higher and higher, the fog is getting worse and worse. So I took my head torch off and was carrying it in my hand, and like got my like GPS on my watch and my GPS device in my pocket, and like literally just that's all I could do. There was no path. It was just bog or ice or slush, and the wind was like howling so bad, and I just was like really, really felt like I was going into oblivion. And I knew I had like a few little peaks before I would get to Crossfell, but those little peaks up there, instead of them being like white trig points, they're like rounded piles of rock, I guess.
Mhm.
Not for me that night they weren't. So I'd be getting closer and like the wind it was just the wind howling, but in my head it was like just people screaming. So it's just people screaming in my ears, and then all of a sudden those little like mounds would like rise up with like big, massive like black arms, and they'd be like trying to pull me in, but I was having to follow the line which was taking me to the rocks, and then I'd be getting closer and closer, and my heart would be going like absolutely like the clap is like this is it, I'm going to get sucked in by this big huge demon, and then it would just turn to a pile of rocks, and I'd be like, oh. Right, okay, here we go again. And then I'd do that and I'd do that. And I literally did that for what felt like hours until I got onto Crossfell, which is a big, massive, like loads of flat pile of rocks. And that just had all sorts coming out of it. And I was just so emotionally broken by the time I got to Greg's hut. Like I felt like I was going to die like 3 or 4 times by getting sucked into these big, massive black demons like that were up there. But it was just piles of rock.
Did you know you were hallucinating?
I did, because every time I got to the rocks, they'd change. But I've been talking to like people in my work about it, like maybe that was just my brain's way of like keeping me alert, like because I had adrenaline like 100%. Like I felt like I was going to get sucked in by those demons like as I was getting closer, but I just kept like following the line on my GPS, and then I'd have a little like lucid moment, and I'd be like, this is mental. I can't believe I'm doing this right now. Like, how many people have done this? Like, just by themselves, like in the middle of the night in a storm, like, just crazy, absolutely crazy. Like, I'm proper proud of myself right now, but I'm literally at my limit.
I just want to ask as well, Nikki, going back to when you were saying about the sickness, not feeling great and the fainting and everything. How is it that you talked about West Highland Way as well, and you knew it happened before, like the first time it did happen to you on whatever event it was and you were being sick, how do you know that it wasn't time to pull the plug on the race and it wasn't sickness and you could carry on? Do you just put one foot in front of the other and keep going, or how do you know?
So I've had a really bad experience of pushing through something that I shouldn't have on an event on the Isle of Man called the Parish Walk, which is like an 85-mile walk around all the parishes on the Isle of Man that you've got 24 hours to complete. Now I'd done it the first year and got 55 miles, and then the second year I'd done it and finished it and been fine, had a great time. So I was going again for the third year, and I stopped being able to take on sort of food or fluids quite early on, maybe just over halfway. And I just kept going because of the way like my head was at the time. And, I've just put in, I guess, one foot in front of the other. But like how I was feeling and the pains that I was getting were like another level. But like I say, it wasn't in a very great place myself personally. So I just pushed on, and I definitely shouldn't. So I got to mile 83, so I only had 2 miles to go. And I collapsed and got taken to hospital, and I'd basically given myself rhabdomyolysis. So that's like when basically your body's like breaking down your muscles, and it releases loads of like really big proteins, and basically blocks your kidneys and makes you really poorly. So I was in hospital sort of 4 or 5 days after that, and it took me like over a year to recover properly from that and sort of get back to, like, it was boxing at the time, and get back to sort of my sport. And I've just always just said to myself, like, I'd never do that again. Like, I know the pains in my legs that I were getting were like nothing I've ever experienced, and I don't really know why I thought it was a good idea to sort of push through them. And my breathing went all funny, and that's probably why I collapsed, to be fair, because I was like hyperventilating quite badly. And so I'd never let myself get to that point. When I was being sick on the West Highland Way, I'd got to the sort of halfway point, and I was going to can it. I was going to pull the plug because I wanted to run it. I wanted to race, and I was just sort of power walking. I was like, well, what's the point? So my partner and I sort of had a chat, and he was just like, well, let's try the gels. Like, let's just try sipping on a gel. Like, don't neck it like in one. He was like, just sip on it. And like the next checkpoint on the West Highland Way was only 10 miles, but it's right next to the main road. So if anything really bad had happened, my support car was really close by. And I said, okay, if I can't run over the next sort of 10 miles, or I don't pick up the pace of the next 10 miles, like, I'll call it at Bridge of Orchy, which was the next like checkpoint. And I did. I started to feel energized again. My legs started going again. I started to be able to take on full gels. And then by the time I got to the next checkpoint, I started to be able to take on fruit and crisps. And then that was it then. I had a really good second half of the race, and I managed to finish second, which was good because I was back in fifth by that sort of halfway point. So because I'd had that experience and also the experience of it really going wrong, I think I'm in quite a good position to know when I need to stop and when I know I can sort of push through. If it got to a point where I was sipping on the gels and I still not keeping them down, and it didn't get to the point where I could eat, it's time for me to call it. But thankfully, since I've done that back, it was 2018, I got rhabdomyolysis. That's never happened, and I have managed to rally. So yeah, it's only because I know myself that I would take that risk, I guess. I wouldn't suggest that for anybody unless they'd been through sort of similar themselves. Like, you only know when it's right to call it.
I guess that you said earlier about the support car, it made you able to push it because you knew they were there. But for a lot of people, they would quit because they knew they were there. So that's the opposite way around.
Yeah, maybe. So
yeah. On the spine, is that what happened then after the faint? And did you just sip on the gels and that was your go-to? And then that's you can go again and refuel and carry on?
Yeah. For like all of the sort of second half of the spine, like probably for the first time ever on a race, like I was starving, like I was hungry all the time, and I was like, this is great. Like, I was going into the checkpoints and having like full meals. Like I've never been able to do that on a race, so like that was a really nice sort of takeaway from the spine as well. Like, you know, that I can actually fuel properly. And, you know, I've very recently started trying the sort of high carb gels from Precision Fuel. They're like 90 grams. And they're great. They've got a little screw top, which is good because I was just taking a bit of that, putting it in my pocket, and then 10 minutes later I'd take a bit more. And then by that point I was then able to eat, like, I have nuts and chocolate and Turkish delight and things like that. So then it was like I could have an actual Turkish delight. Then it was a handful of nuts. Then it was a big block of chocolate, and then it was soup and bread by the time I got to Tan Hill. So yeah, that was good.
And on the topic of food, how many portions of Alston lasagna did you have?
I had 2 portions of the lasagna, but that was because as soon as I got in there, I was a little bit broken when I got to Alston because that was like post Crossfell. And then you come off to a place called Gargrill, but then you've got 7K of just like really tough paths and pavement, and it's just a little bit undulating. And every time I saw a head torch, I thought it was the checkpoint, and it just wasn't. Like, there's still people like randomly out hiking, and like, it's like midnight, like, what are you doing? Go home. Like, you're not on the side. And I keep thinking you're people to the checkpoint, and they're not. And that 7K really dragged on. I was having a pain in like my right foot as well, that I had to, well, I took off my shoe anytime I was on a road and was just walking in my sock. And then when I was on the trails, I'd like pushed down the back of the shoe and was just kind of using it as like a bit of a flip flop or a slipper. Yeah, I was just really suffering when I got to Alston. So as soon as I got in there, I was like, I just want a bed. And he was like, there's not a bed at the moment, but he's like, I'll give you food. And I was like, okay, give me some lasagna, please. And then I had another bit, and then I must have fallen asleep at the table because the next thing was like my volunteer was waking me up to be like, got your bed. So yeah, and then I only planned to sleep for an hour and a half, but when my alarm went off after an hour and a half, I like 100% was not fit to go. So I had another 20 minutes, and then I guess like started to wake up a bit because it was sort of 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and I guess your circadian rhythm starts to like kick in a little bit, and you know, I was ready to go out into the day then. So yeah, and like I say, I was well fueled because I had more toast when I got up as well. So it was like 2 lasagna portions, nearly 2 hours of sleep, and then about half a loaf of bread worth of toast before I left. So that was good.
Well, I'm not sure how far through your journey where you seem to be jumping about. We might be on in the right place, but I was going to say I'm jealous because I've ran for the longest I've been awake is 67 hours, and I've never hallucinated. So I'm
Really?
jealous. Yeah.
Wow. People have like Oren when he did his, like, so you'll know if you've ran the pen anyway, there's loads of big slabs. So he was on the Cheviot and looking at the slabs thinking they were like really, really elaborate neon paintings, like every single slab, and he'd be like, I can't believe somebody's come up and done all this like painting up here, and they'd be like, no. And then he'd look back down and he was like, yep, they're still there. It's just like crazy. Or like Hannah Rickman, she talks about hers like being like really like vivid, crazy things. Like, I've never seen, like, I saw the demons, but they were very plain. They were just very like black and shaped. And then on the Challanger North, I kept seeing people like really vivid. Remember like really vividly seeing like a person in a green jacket with a really long camera, and then that it just wasn't a person. Like, or I remember seeing a couple sitting in the snow like having lunch, and I'd be like, what are they doing out here like when it's like this? And it wasn't people. But I've never had like vivid things that some people see like dinosaurs, don't they? And you know, all sorts. But I can't believe you've been awake for 67 hours and nothing.
I can't wait to find out if I hallucinate, because the longest I've ever ran, Nikki, is 42 miles.
Yeah,
so
we got all to come.
The closest I've been is running along and sort of seeing something out of the corner of my eye, looking over, and like, oh no, I didn't see it properly. And when I actually look at it, it's not that. So okay. I don't count that as a hallucination because it's just you not paying attention properly.
Yeah. That's a long time to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, how far up the country were we in your story?
So yeah, we were at Alston, which is checkpoint 4, checkpoint 4, yeah. So there's only one more checkpoint, which is Bellingham. or Bellingham. I'm not too sure if people pronounce it different. So that the bit from Alston, I left. It was like sort of 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. It's just it's a bit of a slog. I find that section. It's just loads of fields and running along the canal and a train line and things like that. It's just a bit samey and a bit boring. And I was by myself again, and so Oren just gave me a call and he was just chatting about, this person's just behind you, or this person's in front of you, or there's a Challanger North person here, or like I'd ran with a guy called Harry for a bit, like he's only 2K in front of you, or these sorts of things. And it just sort of gave me a bit of a boost to like, do you know what, I just really want some company. So just sort of turned the gas on a little bit to try and catch up with just anybody. But once I sort of got into that flow, started to run really well, and I ran really well to Greenhead, which then takes you on to Hadrian's Wall. And as I got to Hadrian's Wall, like Damien Hall and Ali Bailey were there, and Ali gave me like a quick interview, and I had some Pringles from the safety team, and again had another sort of lease of life. I knew the Hadrian's Wall was tough from having done it in the Challanger North last year, but I didn't see that many people last year on Hadrian's Wall. It was really snowy and there wasn't that many people in front of me, whereas this year there was lots of people out because it was a nice day. And there was lots of Challanger North people, and that was when I caught up with Simon and Chris, who I ran with for quite a while. And they initially let me pass, and then they were like, actually, we're going to come with you. And I was like, yeah, fine, like come, like I'm happy with the company. And yeah, I stuck with them for like really long time, like all the way to sort of Bayoness. Like we were all sort of to and froing together. I left Bayoness with Chris, which is the transitionary checkpoint before the Chivi. It's where you get mince and tatties. It's a great little checkpoint, but you're only allowed half an hour there. So I slept for probably about 20 minutes of that half an hour, and used the other sort of 10 minutes to sort of fill my water and have my food and stuff, and then set off into the Cheviots. Bellingham was a bit of a disaster. I tried to sleep there, but like I was saying earlier, it's so busy. It was just a bit chaotic. There's not much room in the area with the drop bags, and then the room where you sleep, it's just a big empty sort of cold hall. And I tried to sleep, but I was just sort of tossing and turning, cold and not that comfortable. And I just ended up like, I don't think I fell asleep because I got up before my alarm and stuff like that, and just was like, oh, I need to get out of here type thing. And I'd said to myself, like, I'll sleep at Baroness if I need to, which I did, because I really did need to. That was a long slog, even though it's not that far in distance. It just felt like it was really hard work.
Wellness along with the church.
Yeah. So you can sleep in the actual little checkpoint, but then the church is just behind it where you can sleep. People bunk in there. As long as you let Race HQ know. But like I say, when I left Baroness, like it literally was like, 7 in the morning, 7:05 was when we left. And the sun was just coming up, and I really did feel like my circadian rhythm kick in. And as I started to make that sort of climb, so you go along the road a little bit, and then you go off start to make the climb up into the Chivi. It's like I pulled away from Chris, and I was just like, this is it. Like, here we go. Like, I'm going to the end now. And I got up on the top right as the sort of sun was, I guess, just cresting, and it was just a really special like moment. And that is when I started to cry, and I pretty much cried for the whole of the next 20 miles. Like just I don't know, it was like I knew I was going to finish, and I wasn't saying, I just couldn't stop. Like, it's just, you're so tired, and I just couldn't stop. Oren phoned me about lunchtime, and then pretty much just hung up because he was like, I can't understand a word you're saying. And I was like, okay, like that's fine. Like, snot coming out of my nose and crying everywhere, and just, yeah. I had a bit of a break at Hut 1, and they made me coffee and hot chocolate, and had a wee chat with them in there, and that was good. I felt sort of re-energized again to head to Hut 2. It seems like daft because it's only it's 9 miles to Hut 1, and then it's 9 miles to Hut 2, and then it's about just under 7 miles to the finish. But those 9 miles just seem so long. They just they feel like they don't they're never ending. It's quite samey up in the Cheviots as well, and it kind of feels a little bit like you're going the same direction or the same way all the time. And I did quite a lot of the Cheviots in the dark last year, and I remember just thinking to myself, holding my phone, like Race HQ are going to call me because I'm going backwards on the route, or I'm all going off route. Like I wasn't. It just feels that way, because it's quite samey up there. But it was really windy and it was quite cold. But really gorgeous, like beautiful sunny day. So that was nice. Not that I took any advantage of it because I was snotting and sobbing the whole time, but yeah.
When you get to Hut 2 and you know that that's the last point, because when you don't watch on the map, it looks, in fact, when I went down to the finish line last week just for a nosy, I actually considered how far is Hut 2, and it's like 6-7 miles, as you say, and I'm thinking, I wonder if I could run that or go along it and that, and I thought, oh no, I'll just go for a walk. What's that like when you've done that much mileage? Like, does it feel like really close, or does it still feel so far away? Like when you see that very last section, what's that like?
Once you get to Hut 2, you've still got quite a big climb to go called the Shell. And that seems to take forever because you are knackered, and it is quite a climb. It's quite steep. It's it's quite high. It was really windy, and when I got to the top, been having, like I was saying, I had a problem with my shoulder. Like just my bag and the sort of tracker banging against the bone in my shoulder. So I was carrying my bag sort of down on my arm like that. So, but when I got over the Shell and I started to descend, my bag popped open on the right hand side. I was like, oh my God. Like it's 7 miles to go and now my bag is like popped, and I was like, it's only 7 miles, but like I can't run with like the bungee. It was like it was flapping about all over the place, and I was like, oh, just wanted to get home, but I had to like stop and take it off and like tie all the bungee back together, and that just felt like, the sort of a big slap in the face like before I descended. But once I started descending, I let sort of gravity do its work. Like my feet were hurting, but my legs were in good condition, really considering how far I'd come. And I moved really quickly on from Hut 2 to the finish, faster than what I did on the Challanger North as well, which is interesting. It took me like just under 2 hours to get to the finish from Hut 2, which it took me 2 hours and like 10 minutes or something on the Challanger North. So I really did put a little Duracell battery in when I sorted my bag out, and just wanted it to be over. Like I'm just going to let gravity do the work here and pull me down the hill. So, it does it. I think between Hut 1 and Hut 2 feels the longest though. Like those 9 miles are rather rough. But then all of a sudden you see Hut 2, but it's at the top of a hill, which is annoying as well. So you got to go up and then you descend down, then you go back up to Hut 2, then you go down a little bit, and then you go up to the Shell. So there's quite a lot of like that on the last bit as well, which is hard.
Yeah, I'm sure when I was watching the tracker, it was about 4 hours or something for that 9 miles between the two huts.
Yeah, it is hard work.
So really how slow, like, are you barely walking, or how slow is it at that point?
So between sort of the Baroness and Hut 1, I was trying my very best to hold 3 miles an hour. I was just like breaking it down in my head to that as like 3 hours, then 3 hours, and then sort of 2.5 or another 3 hours. I'm like, I can do it. That's a whole day. Like, because I'd left in the morning, I was like, going to be home before tea time, and I just kept that in my head. Like I'm not running any of the hills at any point on the spine, to be honest. Like I'm hiking all of them, but I was doing my very best to just like sort of shuffle sort of 19, 18-minute miles, and that's pretty good going at that sort of stage. Yeah, and I did maintain that. I was way faster, like I said, on those 7 miles towards the end than what I had been between the huts. But I definitely just really was on survival by that point. Like, just want to get in. Like, I just want to be on that finish line. I've visualized it so much now. Like, I just want to get home. So when my bag burst, I honestly was like, I was absolutely devastated that the world had done that to me at that point. I'd only had like 4 miles by that point, because you'd done a little bit of the 7 by then. human. But
Before
yeah,
we get
like,
to before we
go,
get to the
sorry.
finish,
Yeah,
I'll ask an unconventional question.
go
You
for
said
it.
you were crying for the last 20 miles. How much salt do you think you lost more salt during that than normally running?
100%. Like, I dried out like all that bit of my skin as well. Like, you should have seen the state of me when I come in. Like, all my lips were really dry. My nose was like, like if you'd had the cold or the flu for like a week, that is what my nose was like. I'm like so attractive right now. Thanks, everyone. So yeah, I definitely was super dehydrated. Like, it's funny because I don't know if you saw, like, Hannah Rickman had put out a really good blog about her DNF, but she talked in it about like cold induced like diuresis, and I was like, oh, hon, like I get it. Like, I literally on that last day it was peeing like every 2 seconds as well. I was just like, if I've got any fluid left in my body when I get to this finish line, it's going to be a miracle. Yeah, so it was funny. Yeah, it is funny. I'd proper dried out my skin with my own tears.
And then you're finishing the course, you're coming down that last little hill, you turn the trees in the corner, and then you see the finish line and the hotel. And what's that like?
I was just like so happy I could hear the sort of hustle and bustle, and my mum's very well known for being extremely loud at finish lines, so I knew if she like spied me in the horizon that I'd be able to hear it. But there's quite a lot of people in the hill as well, and then there was a photographer had come up, and I was just like, I'll just jump in his car and like get a lift to the finish. And I was like, did I just think that to myself? Like, why did I think that? Like, after all that, I'll just get a lift for the last mile. Like, what the hell? Yeah, just so tired, but just like so elated to like be coming in. I could like when you can see the mountain like things, that's just like so excited. And I stopped. You'd think that would be the point at which I did actually cry, but I didn't. I was just dead happy by that point. Like, I was more excited to finish, and I was a little bit like teary on the finish line, but not like what I was going on and phoned me at lunchtime anyway.
Is that because you didn't have any fluids left, so you can't
Yeah,
cry?
probably. I was like completely, there was nothing to go, nothing left. I felt quite bad as well because there's two guys coming in from the Challanger North, like literally just in front of me. But I was like, sorry, I'm not stopping for anyone. And I just overtook them like right before the tunnels. But yeah, it was just like I just want the finish now. And yeah, it was nice because Lucy had ran with a guy called Tim. So she had come out to see for quite a long bit of the race. So she'd come out to see Tim and then had waited to see me coming in as well, and had a chat with her. And yeah, there was just like, yeah, there was just loads of people there, all just being really nice. And like Auden was there and his two girls were there, and my mum was there. It was just ace. And then quite a lot of the guys that I'd sort of ran to and from were all inside the hotel as well. So it's nice to catch up with them and see them all, happy that they've got the finish, and everybody's sort of explaining war stories and looking at each other's feet and how disastrous they all look. And I've got a picture of me and Yuha who ran for quite a bit together, and oh my God, we look like we've been stung by bees. Like, our faces that like swollen. But yeah, it's that touching that wall is just, oh, you think about it so much in the race, like you feel like it'll never come. It's particularly on that last day, it really feels like it will never come. So when you actually get to do it, it's just elation, but also relief that it's over.
Well, you didn't just finish, you grabbed the podium place as well.
Yes, yeah, and that really was like I had aspirational goals of hopefully finishing within the top 5, just because of the level of the other girls in the race. Like that's Hannah, like Sarah, Perry, Robin, like obviously Lucy and Hannah have experience in the spine, and then Robin's just an absolutely incredible athlete. I knew she would start really strong. Sarah, obviously being a backyard like champion, she used to sleep dep and going for long periods of time and really big mileages, and she's got a lot of FKTs as well. And then there was Elaine Bisson was in the race too, and she's very established on the pennyweight. Like, to get in the top 5 would have been like I say, was an aspirational goal other than like the main goal, which was just to get the finish, because nothing's a given in these races. Like, like anything can happen, like one sort of really bad roll of your ankle and you're done really. Like you can't, if it's a bad sort of injury, you can't plod on for 268 miles because you put yourself out for the whole year, which is not something I'd want for myself. So to finish in the top three, absolutely delighted. Now I was a good few hours, I definitely like plenty of hours behind Lucy, and I was still a good few hours behind Robin. But when I consider how sort of rough my first 2 days were, I'm lucky that I did podium. It's such a shame that Hannah did have to DNF when she did, but like I say, nothing's a given in these races, and you just never know what's going to happen. I guess that's part of the draw of them. That's why we go back, and it's the problem solving and the challenges, and it's the overcoming the adversity. So, yeah, snatching a little podium place, like I say, it was absolutely amazing. And I just couldn't believe it really. I knew I was going to finish in third, but when I realised that that was going to happen, I was like, I can't believe I'm going to be on the podium with like Lucy and Robin. That's mad.
Well,
when you do start and finish, I'm just wondering, out of curiosity, do you have to have any sort of medical checks and things like that? Do they weigh you at all, or?
No, they don't do anything like that sort of pre or post race. Obviously, like when I fainted, they took my blood sugar, they took my blood pressure, they did my heart rate, and what else did they do? They did something else, and then they did it again when I left, as well. So they wouldn't have like if my blood pressure was too low or my blood sugar was too low, but everything was sort of back to normal, even though I was still vomiting in the toilet like constantly. But all of that was like sort of fine, and that is another I guess another reason why it was okay to sort of push on when I did, because like I had sort of like a good idea that my body was all right. There was just something not quite sitting right, obviously, in my stomach, done 108 miles, really tough conditions, not used to sort of sleep debt like that before. And yeah, that was another reason, like really trusted the medics. And the medic that treated me at Hawes had also treated me last year during the Challanger North, and he was like, I remember you, like you chopped your bowl of pasta at me as you were like keeling over. Like, all right, okay, sorry for me, everybody. But that was good because he knew that obviously that had happened last year, and obviously I'd still went on to do well in the race, so that gets helped as well. They're really great, the sort of medical team that are in all this sort of checkpoints. They, you trust them, and it was sort of good to be able to be like, yeah, I'm gonna go and just see how I get on.
It sounds really, really organised, and I suppose that's where a lot of the event entry goes,
Yeah.
because it is such a big race.
Yeah.
And even when I looked into it, just for my own research and what have you, you've got to have quite a lot of experience to enter the full one anyway, haven't you?
Yeah, I 100% it needs to be vetted. Like it's too tough not to be. Like it really like obviously like, people do it in the summer and it's a little bit of a different race, but conditions on the foot can still be really tough. But just the weather, it's another level, and obviously you've really got way less light in the winter as well. So you're spending the majority of it in the dark, so that's different to running it in the summer. It's not. I'm really I'd obviously applied in 2024 to get into the full, but I'm so glad that I had the Challanger North behind me before doing the full. Like I was really naive to what the actual full spine was like. I'm like, oh yeah, Oren can do it. I can do it. Yeah, nah, absolutely not. Like having that. I guess I did do quite a relatively gradual build up. Like I'd done on 100 miler, and then I'd done 120 miler, and then I did 160 miler, and now obviously I've done like a plus 200 miler. So it was a big jump from the Challanger North to the sort of full, but like I'd done quite a nice gradual build up to the 160. So what's another couple of 100 miles?
So would that be your best advice? I'm just thinking, for an absolute novice like myself, sitting in awe watching you guys, and oh my goodness, the full spine. I've said for myself personally, something like that, I don't think I can ever envisage myself doing while my kids are still young, because it's a lot of time to take away from the fact, even anyone without kids, that is a long time to take away from life and being in that bubble. Would you advise just keep on building the distances and just keep at it?
Yeah, I think like, everybody's different, everybody's circumstances are different, but like you have to invest the time. It's not just money and kit and things like that. It is like, big goals require big commitments, and, big time commitments is one of the main things. And for me, like a few years of consistent training, of building up my mileage, like really sort of the main thing I think it's helped has been my recovery. Do you know what I mean? Like, I bounced back like pretty well, and you can jump to these big mileage, but I feel like your body would suffer for longer periods of time. Whereas if you've got consistent, like long periods of time of consistent mileage and gradually building it up to like, big mileage per week, then, you're standing on the start line knowing that you've done everything that you can. I don't think I don't think any distance is out of people's reaches. It's the circumstance that they find themselves in at the time and what they can invest in. But with these big races, it's, people keep on saying, is it physical or mental? And I'm like, it is both, but it is mostly mental. Like your body can do what your brain tells it to, like 100%. That's how I managed to put myself in the hospital for 5 days, because I kept telling myself to keep going. Like that, my body was doing everything to get me to stop, and that's why I collapsed in the end. It was like that sort of survival mechanism. So like if you've got a strong mind, as long as you're making the cut-offs in these races, which the people at the back of the race, like chasing them cut-offs or something else as well. Like, when we finished on Thursday, and I was like, one of my friends was still out on the race. CJ's name was, and he's still out. And I was just like, oh God, I feel sick of the thought of like the people still being out on the route. Like it just. And then if you think of like Kim, who's finishing like at lunchtime on Wednesday as well, like people have done double the time on the route as what he has, and oh, it's just crazy, absolutely crazy. But like I say, I don't think it's out of anyone's reach really. But it's just, like you say, it is a big commitment and a big time investment. But if it's in your head, like you're halfway there, really, in my opinion.
Well, one of the things that you've got that a lot of people won't is previous experience of a different sport, boxing, and like how does the pain compare? How does the mental training compare? Do you think that actually helped you?
I do think boxing has helped me a lot with regards to sort of mental toughness. I think the good thing about ultra running is it's sort of you against the race. There's always like the difference with boxing is like not everything is under your control really, because you've got an opponent in front of you and you've got no idea like where they're at that point in time. Whereas if you control everything in the run up to a race, yes, things can happen, but like a lot of the time it's just you getting from A to B. Whereas from boxing, there's quite a lot of uncontrollables there.
Yeah.
But the pain, it's very different because I mean, like the longest I did was 3 times 3 minute rounds when I was elite. But then 3 minutes feels like 30 miles on an ultra race because you're at 100 miles an hour, like, and trying to keep out of the way of other people's punches as well. So I absolutely loved fighting. Like I loved the sort of I just loved fighting. That was like the sort of my sort of favorite part. I loved the training, and I loved going away to sort of box. The community's different. It's not as friendly as I'm sure you can imagine until the bell rings at the end, and then you're like best pals with the person in the ring as well. And I still speak to a lot of the girls that I did box with, and a lot of the sort of things that I overcame in boxing have, sort of transpired into being able to push through things in ultra running. Like my very second fight, I got absolutely battered and concussion, burst eardrums, all the things that, you don't want to happen on your second ever fight. But again, it was having that sort of really rough experience quite early on that meant that nothing else kind of fazed me. I'm like, well, if I can stay standing when I'm getting all that sort of flung at me. And then we ended up getting bout of the night because she sort of gasped a little bit and I came back, and then we just absolutely went toe to toe for 3 rounds. Like, it's just, it does give you sort of, I guess, just confidence in your ability. But I've definitely got muscle memory still for boxing, but if I went and did a boxing session tomorrow, I'd be dying for the next like 4 or 5 days with like DOMs in my arms and things like that. So But I'm still involved in boxing, but purely sort of admin based now. Like I'm secretary for the Isle of Man Boxing Association, and yeah, just on the Commonwealth Games. Like I'm team manager for boxing as well, which is great to be able to sort of be in and around the sport whilst trying to avoid having black eyes and bust noses.
That was going to be my next question. Do you still box at all? But
no,
really.
just an admin role now. Yeah. Much nicer.
You get sports getting mixed up together, like running and golf or chess and boxing. How about running and boxing? Do you think that you could go one round after running the spine?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I don't know if many boxers can run the spine, but I definitely think I could box post running the spine.
Is that just because you've gone past the pain barrier, you can't feel anything anymore?
Yeah, totally numb now. Your boxing gloves are just going to slide off all the snot on my face anyway, so it's fine.
So when you're running training events, things like that, do you listen to music at all, or do you just run without and just think of whatever comes into the head?
I do a bit of both, particularly when I'm sort of training for a big event, just because I know on a big event, like I like to be switched on quite a lot of the time, and running through the night, I tend not to listen to anything because I'm worried that people will shout that I'm going the wrong way and stuff like that. But me personally, I don't get bored of music. Like I know some people can only listen to it for a certain period of time, but like if I was going out for an 8 or 10 sort of hour training run, like I could listen to music like the whole time. Like I just don't get bored of it. I absolutely adore music, and I get a lot from it as well. Like it really sort of drives me when I need it, and I had it on nearly all of the sort of last day through the Cheviot. Like I'd seen a video, I can't remember when it must have been, like a couple of years before I'd met Oren, and I watched a girl talk about how she'd asked her friends for like a spine playlist, and so that she could listen to it in times of need on the spine. So I did that this year, and that's the playlist that I played on the last day, and there's so many like just good memories and people that like it reminded me of, and like just it was really a really sort of nice sort of motivator, and just good vibes really. Like even though I was crying and sobbing my heart out, like it was just like a bit of a comfort really, and it was a really nice way to sort of drive myself into the finish as well. But yeah, so I'm very much a sort of music person. If I can listen to music on a race, I will, particularly if it's not a big ultra and I'm not running through the night. Like I'll have my tunes in for sure. But like I do use it. It is sort of time off, like as well. Like I try not to think too much about too much, because it's switch off time in my sort of book. Some people use it to go and sort of clear their head. Like I'm just using it to sort of go and think of nothing other than breathing and where I'm putting my feet. So yeah, but I do love my music.
Yeah, people ask me, what do you think about when you're running and you're not listening to music? I don't know.
Nothing. Yeah.
Nothing. If I was thinking about something, it's gone.
Yeah. I'm like that as well. Like I don't. It's great solitude. Like I love running with people. Like don't get me wrong, but like I'm quite happy to go out for hours and hours and hours by myself as well. Yeah, which is probably one of the reasons why I've got into ultra running too. So. Yeah.
You say, Mike, about what you think about when running, when Nikki was saying about a partner proposing at the end of the spine, I think he was thinking about, is that ring still in my back?
I know, I think it's so bold, isn't it? Like, imagine I couldn't deal with the absolute trauma of worrying about. I'd be checking every 2 seconds. Can I feel it? Can I feel it? Can I feel it?
Can we do a kit check?
You wouldn't put it in a pocket though, because you'd fly out somewhere, wouldn't it? Like, oh no. Yeah, he's very brave doing that.
Mike, you were saying about a kit check there.
No, the ring. If like, he's got a list of things. You got this, and this, and this, and you have to have the ring.
Engagement ring.
Yeah, definitely. So now you've done the spine, and you've done some pretty big events already. Have you got anything? I would imagine you've got quite a lot that you still want to tick off on your list, be it bigger or smaller.
Yeah, I mean, I like sort of dream races. Like I've applied to get into Western States for a few years now and still not getting in the lottery. Again, that was sort of one of the, I read about it in a book before I'd sort of got into ultra running and sort of was really, really drawn to the race. So I'd love to get into Western States. But UTMB was one of like my sort of pinnacles of wanting to get into, and I managed to qualify last year when I came third in UTS. So I'm going to UTMB this August, which is really exciting. I'm absolutely buzzing to be able to be on the start line for that race. It's such an iconic sort of trail race, and people there's fans of UTMB and people who don't like UTMB, but like that route is just so iconic in trail running that I just am really excited to go. Um, so I've got that sort of on the cards. I'd love to do something long again like that, but possibly not the Spine. More maybe sort of thinking something in Switzerland or Tour de France, or something along those lines, somewhere where it's a bit more of a adventurous route, with lots more nice things to look at rather than lots of farm fields and canals and trains and things like that. So yeah, they're sort of all on the cards. Like hopefully, I'd love like I say to get into Western States, and then if I got into Tour de France, like I could then get into Hard Rock and start playing the lottery for that and things. So there's loads. There's loads. Yeah, like I could. There's loads I'd like to do. I'd love to do a race with Oren. So we've chatted about, doing the race across Switzerland, which you can do as like a mixed pair. So I'm 40 next year, so that's sort of like maybe a little bit of a, 40th birthday goal. So, but haven't done any of the rounds yet either. So like I'd love to do the Ramsey round, obviously being Scottish, but like Bob Graham and Paddy Buckley is on my sort of radar as well. And there's the new round in Scotland, the Martin Moran Foundation round, which looks really good all around Torridon. Yeah, it's just, I mean, if I packed in my job tomorrow, I definitely would not be like sitting about doing nothing, that's for sure. But yeah, I think this year the big one's sort of like I've ticked off one of my big A races already, which is great. So the next one's UTMB in August, but I'm hoping to do some of the Sky running series as well. I'm going to go to do the 14 Peaks in Wales in June, and yeah, and then just sort of some local races, and sort of build to being ready to run about the Alps.
Sounds amazing. What amazing races you've got coming up.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. I'm in a really great position.
That probably leads on to a later question, was what is next? But
Yeah.
You've got, is it UTMB? Is that your next one?
So my next one will be the mountain marathon that I mentioned earlier. So that's like the local sort of ultra race that goes from north to south. So that's Easter weekend. So that gives me a nice amount of time to sort of recover properly. Like it really did take me quite a while to recover from the Challanger North, and whereas like physically I was sort of ready to get back to it, but mentally I wasn't sort of ready to tackle really hard training or big mileage yet. So I've sort of given myself enough time to just build nice and slowly, and the race isn't until April, so that sort of gives me quite a lot of February to just take my time and then sort of switch it on maybe 6 to 8 weeks before the race, which is nice. And then that sort of leads quite nicely into the race in June, which is part of the Sky Running race, and then that leads quite nicely into UTMB in August. But I've got sort of, idea. I'd quite like to do a backyard ultra. I'm quite drawn to that sort of event as well, but I'm not sure when that might slot in. UTMB again, it's a big time investment. It's actually quite a costly event to go to and actually enter. So that's got to get a lot of my focus. So I wouldn't want to go and do a backyard just before heading to UTMB, but maybe a bit later in the year. There's some backyards that are quite late on in the year that might find myself starting.
You've just got me interested. You're talking about the Spine and all that, but now that you're talking about backyards, I've done 10 of them.
No way! Wow. Which ones have you done?
Which ones have I not done? I did Rasselbach last year.
Oh yeah.
42 hours in that. So
nice.
I won that. But no, I'll talk to you about it after the
Yeah.
podcast
Yeah.
because this is not about me. This is about you. So
Sorry. I
So
get
I
excited
think
about these things as well.
yeah, no, we've got a lot to talk about. So
something just popped into my head there that we've not actually really properly said post-spine. How is recovery going? Like, have you, this is an insane question to ask from myself. Have you been out for a run since it at all?
I did go today for my first one, which is like a full week of like nothing. I went on a little just dead easy sort of lunch run today. Just more, probably more for my head rather than anything else. I found like myself in the afternoons in particular feeling really tired. So having a little run lunch today helped with sort of motivation this afternoon, and I'm just going to run every other day for now, and I'm not going to do anything if I don't feel like it. Like I said, I'm not going to rush back. Like I'm just going to take it easy, and just wait until I sort of switch back my focus to hard training again. Other than that, like recovery's been pretty good. Like I had a pretty bad cough when I finished. So my first night's sleep was really disturbed, and like I was freezing cold, but I was in a terrible like night fever, and that wasn't a fun night. I slept better on the Friday night, and then the night sweats seemed to keep coming. But other than that, like I told you about the pain in my foot that I had to take my shoe off, or like there's still a little bit swelling there. When I wake up in the morning putting my trainer on, it's pretty painful. But it settles. It's just little niggles. You've done nearly 270 miles, haven't you? Like your body's been through a lot, and so's my brain. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how well I have recovered, to be honest. Like, and I guess that's just like I was saying earlier, it's testament to consistent training and good physical prep and that sort of stuff. So yeah.
right, one of the last questions what I'll probably ask you is, do you have anybody fictional, alive, not with us anymore, that you would love to have a run with?
I was like, when you sent those questions, you're like, that's a great question, because I initially was a little bit like, oh, I don't know. But then when I thought about it properly, there was like tons of people that I'd love to go for a run with. I think like, I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but like a lot of the girls that I met on the spine, like I'd love to actually have a proper like run and a chat with. I only very briefly talked to Lucy, I only briefly talked to Sarah. I talked to Ali Bailey like a couple of times, but it was sort of fleeting, sort of interviews. I talked to Hannah briefly in the checkpoint, but I was a bit out of it, and she had just DNF'd, and we've messaged since. Same with Mel, but I'd love to go like with that little like crew of girls and just have like a good chat. Ailish McColgan is another like Scottish runner who I sort of like inspires me all the time, like that race where she's like coming, in the Commonwealth Games when she's coming into the finish and just like giving absolutely everything, like so much grit. Like I always think about that in my speed sessions to like get me to through the final rep. So I'd love to meet her. The big sort of American girls as well would be great, like Courtney Dauwalter, Katie Scheid, like there's loads of people like that I'd love to run with. But I did have a really good chat with Kim Collison and Kitchek, and he was really nice, and he'd be a great person to have a run with. Jack Scott, Tom Evans, Damien Hall. I'm free for a run with everybody, anybody, feel free. So yeah, just like yeah, there's so many people, like it's quite hard to sort of pinpoint, but the Spine Girls would be a nice one to do, or Ailish if she's ever around in the hill, man.
I'm sure you'll get to run with them at some stage, because I was like that last year with quite a few people, and I've been lucky enough now that I've ran with quite a few of them. It's a bit surreal when you do actually get to it. It's quite cool.
I felt like that when I first chatted with Sarah Perry, and I was like, oh my God, Sarah Perry. Like, I've followed so many of like our fastest known times in our backyards, and like, she's obviously she'll go to Bigs now, and she's been the UK like champ, and like she's a teacher as well, which was like my background, and I was just like, I don't know, I just felt like before I met her, I felt like I knew her, well, even though I didn't. But she was so nice when I chatted with her on the trail, as well, and it was just like really, yeah, she just ace. Like I think she's like a crazy strong woman, which was nice. And Lucy was just so much fun and just full of energy and just like hilarious as well. And I didn't get a chance to chat with Robin, but again we've messaged, just telling, giving each other sort of well done and hope to see you soon type thing. But yeah, I'm free for any wins.
Well, one last question from me. Nikki might have some more, but was there any one piece of kit that you think was essential or saved your race in this year's Spine?
For me, it was those 90 carb gels, 90-gram carb gels. I also had a really, really good waterproof and insulated jacket. I had a Mountain Equipment waterproof, Firefox or something it's called, which was just spot on. And my Columbia insulated jacket was super lightweight, packed really well into my kit. But when I was freezing, like I say, I was boiling within sort of 10 minutes, and I'd been so wobbly that body heat was like something that I really needed at the time. But yeah, those Precision Fuel gels were great, and my Turkish Delight. Yeah, but I definitely would advise investing in a really good waterproof jacket. I had an Innovate jacket last year, which was great, but it's sort of done after the Spine, if you know what I mean, because it was quite snowy and wet and wild, like it's some of the race last year, whereas my Mountain Equipment rain jacket is, looks good as new, and it's ready to go. Ready to go again for the Alps.
Good. Well, we're going to wrap it up there. You stay on the line and we'll talk about backyard ultras in a minute.
Yeah,
but
great.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for podcast Nikki for being Nikki. And that wraps it up from me.
Thank you, Nikki, for joining us.
No problem. Thank you.